Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Oh, yeah, sorry, even it's afternoon, yeah, but yeah, good morning at your end. Yeah, so we'll be starting by 2. People are joining in already.
Join. Join.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. I said, yes, good afternoon.
Yes, Prof. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Joseph.
Good afternoon, sir.
I guess we're all set. Yeah, good
Yes, sir.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mark. Nice to see all the great guys. Well done for all the wonderful work. Dr. Azuka, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Nice to welcome everybody this afternoon. So we allow Joseph and his team to take us through when it is time. So over to you, Joseph and Alphonsus. Dr. Metri, good afternoon.
Hello. Hello. Good afternoon.
Nice
Sorry.
to see you here. Nice to see you here. Good. Good.
Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. I guess we still have a lot of people to join. Maybe we give some few minutes for more people to join. Yeah. Matri, how's your work going?
Busy. Preparing all the logistics, as you know.
I can imagine that. Yeah, I can imagine that. So maybe, I don't know if I responded to your mail. I need to respond to that. I need to respond. Dr. Toby has responded, but I think I need to respond to that so that we can get preparing. Actually, we are set for you, and yeah, everything should go well, hopefully. Yeah.
Thank you. No worries. This can wait after the webinar.
Okay, yeah, it's all right. So, Joseph, when are we starting?
We're starting right away. I think the ES is the one moderating for the webinar, so
It's okay.
I believe we'll be starting up now.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alphonsus.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Dr. Segan Frank, Dr. Metri. I can see all our panelists on the call this afternoon. And then I can see officials of Nigerian Medical Student Association. Dr. Joseph is on the call. You're all welcome to this webinar that is being organized between the Nigerian Medical Student Association and ISTH, PANDORA-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic. It's a privilege for us to be here this afternoon. I can also see a number of registered participants on this call. I'd like to appreciate every one of you for joining. We'll start right away, and we expect that all other participants will join us so that we can maintain the time schedule. My name is Alphonsus Agberemole. I'm the Executive Secretary of ISTH Virtual Research Clinic, and I'm standing this afternoon to moderate this session of the Global One Health webinar. Our panelists are available, and we have a number of attendees so that we can start, and we'll start right away. I will start by sharing with you the agenda for this afternoon. It will come up shortly. First on the agenda, we'll have Professor Akere Dani Asogun, who is the principal investigator for the Pandora site at ISTH Iran, Nigeria, and also the head of the Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic. With us this afternoon, he will open this session with some remarks. Professor Asogun, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Alphonsus, and thank you, panelists, and everyone on the call. So, okay. So thank you very much again. I want to thank Dr. Alphonsus and our staff at the ISTH Pandora Virtual Research Clinic for this great effort to put together this webinar. We're happy that's come finally today. We've been expecting today, and expecting more people to join and have all that the panelists will deliver to the students who are young researchers. So on behalf of the senior coordinators in Pandora IDNet Consortium, I'd like to heartily welcome everyone to this webinar. Principally, I'd like to mention Professor Ali Zumla, University College London. We are really grateful to you, sir, if you are listening to us. And the coordinator of Pandora, Professor Francine Otomi from Congo. They have been immensely very supportive in the establishment of the virtual research clinic in ISTH, on which platform we're having this webinar. So I also want to thank Pandora staff in ISTH who have been part of this preparation. So you are welcome. So I'm hoping that today we have, the panelists are ready to look at capacity building among early career scientists. This time we're focusing on the medical students. So I'm looking forward to a very exciting time that we can share how best to begin research. I mean, meaningful research. The capacity for research in Africa is still very low, and we hope that if we start early enough to build capacity of our early career researchers and the doctors, that will contribute a lot to raising the standard of research in Africa, not only Nigeria. And so beyond today, we'll be expecting people will start something along this line. So I will leave it at that point, and so that we can have enough time for the panelists to do justice to this to the topics we have today. So once again, you are welcome, everyone, and hope we have a very great time today. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Prof, for those very wonderful opening remarks. Thank you once again. Also, right now, we would also like to bring on board the president of the Nigerian Medical Students Association, Mr. A.G. Egba. Clement, are you on the call? I can see you. So please, it's time for you to share your remarks from the Nigerian Medical Students Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't know, can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you, but we would have loved to see you too.
Okay, my camera is quite bad, but then I'll try to switch over to a phone. I'm using a system and then the camera is bad.
Just go ahead with your remarks. Thank you.
All right, sir. Good afternoon, Prof. Good afternoon, Dr. Segan. It's afternoon here in Nigeria. I don't know where you are. It might be in the morning. Good afternoon, Dr. Alphonsus, and every other senior members of the Pandora research group and very senior colleagues and mentors in the field of research that are here with us this afternoon. It gives me great pleasure and delight to have come up with this for NIMSA, particularly for the fact that, yes, like Prof rightly said, the culture of research and the capacity of researchers that we have, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole, is actually on the low. And that calls for programs and events like this to, to come up and then, stimulate this attitude and this idea of research among early researchers or those that want to pick an interest in research. For one, when this idea came on board, in fact, I jumped at it without looking backward, because I understand that in this field, particularly in the field of medicine, research is one of those tools that can only, be utilized properly to see that we advance the course of medical research and the standard of health, particularly in Nigeria. So it's a pleasure that we are here today. And I'm sure most medical students and even those that came from other departments, we have people from natural sciences here, we have people from other departments that are here. I'm very sure all of us are super excited to to kickstart this idea, this initiative, for research. And I hope that moving forward, we'll be able to sustain this idea and then continue in this same line so that we begin to catch us young. There are a lot of us that want to venture into research, but then we don't have the technical know-how on what to do. And I'm sure we are going to learn a lot today in this webinar, and I'm looking forward to taking active participation in this in this webinar. And I'm also indulging all participants in this webinar today to pick our jotters, get our pens, and then let's get ready to take down notes, because a lot is going to be learned today, and I'm super excited. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Prof, for giving us this opportunity, and every other team member that has contributed in one way or the other to see to the success of this program. So we look forward to having a very fruitful deliberation. Thank you, sir, and thank you again.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Clem, for those opening remarks. I agree with you that we expect to gain a lot today. We expect the session to be stimulating. We expect the session to be inspiring, and we are aware that our team of speakers and panelists, they are ready to do just that. On a very sober note this afternoon, some time ago, that was a few weeks ago, when this webinar was initially scheduled, we had made preparations to host this webinar. Something unfortunate happened here in Nigeria among the medical students. We had a group of students who had gone for a function somewhere, but something unfortunate happened. And in the course of that event, we lost 3 medical students to the cold arms of death. We've been mourning them, and it was one major reason why we had to reschedule this webinar for a later date. And so this afternoon, we'd like again, on behalf of Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic, and on behalf of the organizers of this webinar, extend our condolences to the families, to the friends, and the loved ones of those dear final year students that were lost in that very tragic incident. And so, if we don't mind, we would like to spend a few moments of silence as we honor the departed persons. right? And so from us here, we would like to trust that the families of the departed friends of ours, these beautiful souls, will find the strength to bear this loss and to keep their noble memories with them for a long time to come. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on now with the schedule for today. This afternoon, I say afternoon here in Nigeria, we are privileged to have someone very experienced to join us on this webinar to deliver the keynote speech in the person of Dr. Segan Frank. Dr. Segan Frank, a PhD. She's an assistant professor of anthropology and co-hire of the Hawk Institute of the Life Sciences in Penn State University, USA. She's a research fellow at the Calabar Institute for Tropical Disease Research and Prevention, and founder and director of the Cross River Ecology and Health Project. Her research program is centered here in Nigeria, where she studies the social and the ecological origins of zoonotic diseases. Her current research projects include the investigation of wildlife hunting and trade as a pathway for zoonotic spillover, behavioral risk factors for zoonotic transmission of monkeypox, and then Lassa fever virus dynamics within anthropogenic ecosystems. These disease conditions that have been mentioned, monkeypox, Lassa fever, and then if you consider yellow fever, these are conditions that are very much prevalent within Nigeria, and from time to time, we have to deal with the issues that arise from them. So we are privileged to have Dr. Segan Frank working here in Nigeria, supporting research and supporting intervention programs for the control of this condition. And from this research, she endeavors to inform and co-develop community-based One Health solution for improved food, environmental, and global health security. So, gentlemen and everyone this afternoon, welcome Dr. Segan Frank to deliver her speech. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
If we are clapping, we should clap. Yeah, I can see Dr. Metri clapping. We'd like to follow you. We should clap. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes, loud and clear, and your screen is visible.
Great, thank you so much. I just first want to say it's such an honor to be here today to have the eyes and ears of the emerging scientists in Nigeria. And I'm really excited to share my experiences working in Nigeria over the last 15 years and use them as a bit of a lens to understand some of the research opportunities centered in One Health that I envision in Nigeria and that can be built off of for future research led by this vibrant group of people. So this is an image from a New York Times article on the ecology of infectious diseases. And it really depicts the entanglements between humans, animals, and the environment that have led to the emergence of zoonotic diseases. And I really like this picture because it brings home, hold on, let me just close my window. There's a lot of noise. I really like this picture because it brings home the idea that infectious diseases and human health can't be understood by biology and human medicine alone, but require an understanding of integration with our environment and the ecology that we live in, so animals and our social systems. So today I'm going to talk about emerging infectious diseases, especially those of importance in Nigeria, but also globally. And so emerging infectious diseases are any diseases that are increasing in incidence or geographic spread, often referred to as new human diseases. And 60% of emerging diseases are zoonotic, meaning that they originate in animals. And a majority of those come from wildlife. And this heat map shows the distribution of zoonotic emerging infectious disease events globally. And it really shows that they're concentrated in low latitude areas with high levels of biodiversity, great population growth and poverty, rapid land use change, and high levels of human-wildlife contact. And these factors all interact at broad scales to affect the transmission of diseases from animals to humans. But deciphering the transmission of diseases from animals to humans requires understanding human-environment interactions within the local cultural and environmental context where these diseases originate. So I've spent the past 15 years exploring some of these questions in Nigeria, which I find to be a really compelling place to work, full of opportunity in One Health research. So amidst unfortunate headlines of Boko Haram and email scams, Nigeria is home to, it's easy to forget that Nigeria is home to some of the richest biocultural diversity in West Africa and globally. The area that I work in, Cross River National Park, is a biodiversity hotspot. But Nigeria is also home to one of the largest populations globally. It's Africa's largest population. It is expected to be the third most populous country in the world by the end of the century. And as a result of a lot of these changes, environments and cultures are also changing rapidly. And this is providing new opportunities for zoonotic diseases to transmit between animals and humans and subsequent human-to-human transmission. And understanding the social and ecological origins of new human diseases is the focus of my work in Nigeria, which is housed currently at Penn State, where I am an assistant professor in the risk lab. And so these three pictures really depict the different arms of my current research program that I'll use to describe some of my vision for One Health research in Nigeria. And so my first and most long-term project within Nigeria is what I call a pathogen agnostic project. And so this project doesn't focus on a specific pathogen, but by a common pathway by which diseases are transmitted from animals to humans. And that's through wildlife hunting and trade, which is rampant in Nigeria and other countries globally. We're about halfway through or rounding up the first stage of a project studying Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox. And this is an area where we don't know a lot about the ecology and natural history of the disease within Nigeria, which really limits our ability to do some forms of research like epidemiological studies or ecological investigations into reservoir hosts. And we're using ethnographic methods, including interviews with Mpox cases over the last couple of years to understand the behaviors that might contribute to spillover of the disease from animals into humans. And then our other project, which is just kicking off and is supposed to continue for the next 5 years, is looking at how human-environment interactions affect the ecology of disease. So we don't only engage with interactions with animals that affect transmission, but we engage with the environment in a way which alters how animals behave, their population dynamics. And so we're studying this within the context of Lassa fever and how humans interact with the environment that affect the population dynamics of the primary reservoir hosts, the multi-mammate rat, in a way that might facilitate spillover into humans. And so I'll talk about all three of these today and really use them as a way to understand human-animal environment interactions in the context of One Health. And so One Health is a concept that really recognizes this interrelatedness between the health of animals and the environment as well as humans. So human health cannot be conceptualized or treated within a vacuum of humans. We must understand the health of animals and the environment that we coexist in. And so One Health is a fundamentally interdisciplinary endeavor. And this figure shows that a pathogen represented by this vertical blue line must overcome a series of barriers. And if one of these is impenetrable, spillover from an animal host to a human cannot occur. And so the determinants of transmission of a disease from an animal host to a human is something that's being studied by researchers in many, many disciplines, as you can see on the left-hand side of this screen. And the work that I'll talk today focuses primarily on human exposure, at combining the disciplines of epidemiology, medical anthropology, social science, and behavioral ecology, and their impacts on infectious disease dynamics. And so I really like this figure, which is an expanded One Health model that provides a framework for incorporating anthropology and social sciences into One Health. One Health approaches typically focus on animal reservoirs of disease from veterinary and ecological perspectives. And so these studies focus on the biology of the pathogen within animals, the ecology of the pathogen, or the density, diversity, and movement of animal reservoirs of hosts. And this is actually how I got into this field, was studying these beautiful primates in the lower right-hand corner and how gastrointestinal parasites that are shared with humans transmit among wildlife. But transmission cannot be understood just by studying animals. It requires contact with humans. And so understanding contact requires interacting with humans. And I became interested in this when I was following monkeys around, observing humans interact with those monkeys, as well as other potential reservoirs of zoonotic diseases. And given that I had a background in anthropology, this allowed me to use a lot of social science methodologies that are really useful for understanding contact, which is really critical to transmission. And so this can include qualitative interviews. And so these are really good techniques, in-depth interviews and observations for understanding the breadth of human-animal interactions that might elicit contact. But also quantitative interview methods that really are focused on quantifying those forms of contact or the prevalence of those forms of contact within a population. So how often do people hunt? How often do they hunt bats? Who's engaged in butchering? These are the kinds of questions that we're really interested at that interface. And so one of the projects that we're currently working on uses a mixed methods approach, which combines these quantitative and qualitative social science methods to understand the nature and frequency of contact between humans and potential reservoirs of Mpox within Nigeria. And so these qualitative methods that I use are really good for eliciting information that we may not think to ask about, or that people might hide because they're engaging in illicit or illegal behavior, like hunting and trade of wildlife, or things that people just don't think are interesting enough to report. So mundane practices, like rats in the house, that they think are a regular part of life and may not be interesting to report. And we're combining those with quantitative methods to really understand how humans contact potential reservoirs of Mpox, and this can provide hypotheses for future case control studies looking at risk factors for Mpox, or for ecological investigations looking for the reservoir. And I'll talk a lot about these today because this is a huge gap in research within Nigeria and research capacity within the social sciences through a medical lens. But it's also a really great opportunity for research because it doesn't require a lot of fancy equipment or cold chains to store samples, and really involves what Nigerians are best at, and that's conversing with each other and dialogue and eliciting information. And so contact is important, and these are some examples of how we can measure contact. But in addition to tallying contacts that can lead to transmission, we must also understand how human activities are affected by characteristics of individuals, populations, and cultures that bring them together in contact. So these are kind of the underlying drivers that can be really ripe for interventions that we can target. And so I'll kind of work our way through this. And again, I became interested in this when I was studying the ecology of diseases within wildlife populations, but living with people in hunting sheds in the forest and realizing that the engagement of humans in activities that elicit contact with animals, like hunting and butchering, was much more widespread and took a different form than I had previously conceived, learning about this from afar. And so, for example, contact can be influenced by an individual's characteristics, like gender, age, education, can all affect who handles animals, who butchers animals, who trades them in a market. And this photo in a hunting shed in Cross River really challenged a lot of preconceptions of typical male hunters who contact animals and showed a wider engagement of individuals with handling animals within these settings. And that means that interventions that are targeting hunters should really think about the larger population and not just focus solely on males. Generation and age differences are also important. We think about hunting and trading wildlife as a livelihood strategy of adults, but children engage in hunting of animals for play, or when hunters bring back animals, they're often kept as pets or played with children in the communities, or those children are also selling those. And so when we're thinking about epidemiological surveys or questionnaires that are trying to look at risk behaviors, these often exclude children because they're targeting largely because of the ethical considerations of incorporating children. But by doing so, they're missing a whole at-risk population that's engaging in different forms of contact with animals that can lead to spillover. And we're seeing a lot of risky behaviors in children and a lot of index cases that are children in our current MPOX study in Nigeria, which is a really important area for future research. So as part of my PhD, I wanted to understand what drove an individual to hunt as part of their livelihood, since this is a really important mode of contact between humans and animals in Nigeria. And so working across several communities that are proximate to rainforest areas in Cross River, we did questionnaire surveys and we incorporated these characteristics into a study that predicted whether, into a model that predicted whether an individual hunted or did not hunt. And we found that hunting was really associated with being younger, having a low education level, and positively associated with large families, having a father who hunts, and being of the resident cultural group. And we also found that hunting is largely considered an undesirable and low merit livelihood in a lot of these communities. 99% of people reported that they did not want their children to hunt, often complaining of the suffering within the forest, and wanted them to get a different job and get an education. And so this really told me that hunting and wildlife trade is something that a lot of people in rural communities are forced into for a lack of better alternatives and educational opportunities. In addition to characteristics of individuals that shape how people interact with animals in the environment, there's also characteristics of the household that also must be considered. So the focus of my postdoctoral work was looking at the role of wildlife and wildlife hunting in maintaining food security in communities that relied heavily on bushmeat as a source of not only diets, but also income. And so we looked at the dietary diversity of people in these communities and looked at what predicted whether they were food secure or insecure. And we found that food secure households, if I can, that food secure households were more likely to consume meat, poultry, and fish. And this was explained largely by bushmeat. And out of all the bushmeat, rodents were most important for maintaining food security. And we know that rodents are really important reservoirs for multiple zoonoses in Nigeria and globally. And this graph really just shows that food secure households, shown in blue here, despite consuming more bushmeat, were consumed a smaller diversity of species. So food insecure households, which are here in the pink, had a more diverse community composition of the species that they ate. And this often included small-bodied animals like bats and rodents that we also know are important reservoirs of disease. So the nature of the food security, whether a household is food secure or insecure, may lead to more frequent exposures to animals in food secure households, but a different type of exposure in insecure households that may alter risk of zoonotic infection. In addition to household characteristics, we also want to think about the characteristics of the communities that we're working in. And so there's a large list of community characteristics that can influence how people interact with animals. But one that we're focused on in an ongoing project is on location and looking at how hunting practices, trading in wild meat differ between a gradient from rural settings to urban areas within Cross River State. So we're working with hunters, village households, vendors of bushmeat like restaurants and hawkers, and urban markets to understand the different species people are coming into contact, the condition of that meat, whether it's smoked or raw, and who's responsible, who's coming into contact with those animals. And we're fortunate to be able to couple this with a survey of meat from those animals to look for potentially zoonotic pathogens. And this is an avenue of research that is challenging to conduct in Nigeria, given the requirement of cold chains and laboratory facilities. But I really believe that as technology is changing, we're going to have more opportunities for this type of research in remote settings, like the communities that I work in that have no roads or power. And so we're working with what we can to achieve this, but I'm hopeful that this will become more accessible in the future. Another important characteristic of humans that influences the way that we contact animals is through our social and cultural norms. So in the US, tick-borne diseases like Lyme disease can be transmitted through the norm that a lot of people here share a bed with their pets. So you can see this picture here, much to the chagrin of many Nigerians that I work with. Sharing beds with pets can lead to transmission of tick-borne diseases. Whereas in areas in Nigeria, even across Nigeria, which is very culturally diverse, the acceptability of eating different animals like rodents or bats may change from community to community or between cultural groups. And this can influence whether somebody is exposed to an infection. You could have the same amount of pathogen in the environment, with the only difference being that somebody in one community hunts and the other community doesn't, and that changes who is at risk of zoonotic transmission. Also, the use of cultural and medicinal uses of animal products is widespread in rural and urban areas in Nigeria. These pictures down here are a small collection of many what we call zoo therapy, so the use of animals in medicinal and cultural practices that may lead to contact with animals in different forms. Most recently, we learned about the common practice of using the giant pouched rat, which is a putative reservoir for Mpox, to cure yellow fever in Nigeria, showing this complex interrelatedness of cultural practices with multiple zoonotic disease systems and potentially leading to different exposures. And so my extension of this model that looks at not just human characteristics and contact, but also how humans impact the ecology of animals and the dynamics of disease through their interactions with the environment. And so to investigate this, we look at Lassa fever, a rodent-borne virus that is transmitted by the primary reservoir Mastomys natalensis. And much of our understanding of who is at risk of Lassa is based on looking at where Mastomys is, where people are, and where they overlap, and that's what's high risk. However, risk cannot be understood from coexistence alone. We need to understand at the local level the way people interact with animals and how they interact with the environment. And so this is a conceptual diagram of our current project, and I'll walk you through it to illustrate some of these ideas. And so humans come into indirect contact with rats through agricultural practices that influence risk. So we're up here right now. And so this can directly influence risk by creating areas of indirect contact. Mastomys natalensis is a major crop and household pest, contaminating food sources in croplands and in household settings, including stored food from the fields, but also cooked food, which can lead to indirect contacts. And these are often low intensity, so maybe lower risk contacts in that they're indirect, but they're at a really high frequency when people are sharing household settings with reservoirs of disease. And so this slide shows some of our preliminary works studying human-rodent interactions in Ebony State, where Lassa is endemic. And this is a salience plot that is produced from interviews with key informants who have specialist knowledge of agriculture, hunting, or mastomys. And basically, we asked them to free list the importance of different animals or different rodents within different domains of life. And this particular plot shows that the most important rodents for indirect contact, so contact with feces, urine, fur, are mastomys and rattus. So these are animals that were mentioned frequently and had a high rank. So we're the top rank or in the lower right-hand corner. And then based on these responses, we can also code individual responses to learn not only quantitatively what are the most important animals that they're interacting with in household spaces, but also to get an idea of what those interactions look like. So people will refer to mastomys as the landlord of the house and themselves as tenants. They're really the ones who are rampant within the household settings. And this contributes to a lot of contamination of food items, but also exposure to nests and burrows of these animals. Humans also hunt Mastomys natalensis, and this creates, again, directly influences Lassa risk through direct contact with bodily fluids. And when we produce these same plots, but this time we're asking about hunting behavior, and we have to phrase these questions differently using words like trap, catch, and hunt. Because if you just use the word hunt, people won't report on small rodents. But if you talk about catching and trapping, they'll start to tell you more about some opportunistic interactions with small animals. But mastomys are way less important as a food resource for hunting, and people are coming into presumably less direct contact with mastomys. But it's also important to realize that this may result in kind of a balance, even though this is not an important form of contact compared to larger bodied rats that are preferably or preferentially hunted. It creates this direct exposure with animal bodily fluids that leads to a much riskier practice and more like a higher dose of potential infection. So it's also something, it's still something to consider. And then again, when we're coding these responses, we learn that mastomys is really referred to as children's meat. People say they used to, in this area, used to hunt it commonly, catching tons of animals in one setting or in one go. But now it's pursued mostly by children or opportunistically caught in the farms. And so again, highlighting this importance of children in interacting with reservoirs of disease. And so agricultural practices and hunting can directly affect Lassa risk through indirect contact and direct contact, but they can also alter the ecology of the disease. Agricultural by acting on the population dynamics of rodents. So agricultural practices provide, human agriculture provides a huge quantity of nutritional resources for Mastomys natalensis, and household settings provide shelter as well as standing crops. And so this can alter, this is providing a resource base for mastomys and potentially maintaining high population sizes, providing kind of these bottom-up pressures. Whereas hunting can directly result in direct offtake and could potentially reduce population sizes. So really understanding how human activities influence reservoir species is another important component. And it's not just the size of population of mastomedes, but it's also important to know where mastomedes goes and when. And this might be influenced by, again, agricultural practices that move resources, critical food resources from mastomedes from agricultural settings to households. But also the way that people construct their communities. So one thing that I've seen in Nigeria is in that some regions, you have really centralized houses where farmlands are really far away. And this is going to make it hard for animals to come between farm and bush between village settings and farm settings as easily compared to other houses which are more disaggregated and surrounded by their farmland, provides an opportunity for rodents to move between household and agricultural settings, kind of getting the best of both worlds. And so we're investigating a lot of these dynamics within communities that vary between their hunting practices, their settlement patterns, as well as their direct contacts with animals to understand how this influences risk of LASA. And so all of this is just to say that we can't understand disease emergence through tallies of contact, but that it's a dynamical system that must be understood through interactions with animals, but also our shared environments. And understanding such systems requires interdisciplinary efforts across fields that study animals, humans, and the environment that make up that One Health triad. But this must be grounded in local knowledge. And so a lot of the work that we do uses participatory methods to gain a better local understanding of an ecological system that can inform our scientific understanding of that same system. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that within Nigeria. And this mixed methods approach, collecting qualitative and quantitative data, can inform and refine some of our quantitative epidemiological or mathematical models. So these are represented by process-based mathematical models or pattern-based like statistical models. And so this has been referred to as the 3P approach, which uses participation, process, and pattern as a framework to really gain a more robust understanding of zoonotic diseases. And so finally, I just want to point out that much of the research that I've talked about today has been achieved through collaboration with local institutions and local scientists. And these have largely consisted of motivated teams of Nigerian students from forestry and wildlife who know a lot about animals and the foods that people are eating, with veterinary sciences that know about animals and the pathogens, with the epidemiologists, medical practitioners, and anthropologists who really focus on human behaviors and human health component and trying to integrate this into a more holistic understanding of the emergence of disease. These students work collaboratively with me in really remote and challenging environments, but they quickly become the experts, and I learned so much from working with them. They're often the bridge between me and understanding a lot of the context of these systems. And I look forward to collaborating with the next generation of Nigerian scientists working at the forefront of some of these major global health challenges. And I think as early career scientists, you are really well poised to tackle some of the big questions in One Health, and importantly, start to design some of the most effective solutions that really mitigate risk at the human-animal environment interface that is changing rapidly within Nigeria. And so with that, I will just thank you for your time and open the floor to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Segan-Frank, for that stimulating delivery. We appreciate you, and I would like to follow the lead of Dr. Metri again, because I can see her clapping. I like that. I could see you clapping, so we'll clap. Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. So it's time now for us to take comments and questions from participants. So participants, you can actually indicate by show of hand, and then we'll allow you to speak. Alternatively, you can drop your questions and comments in the Q&A session. So here we have in the Q&A box a comment from Mr. Ibrahim requesting that the session is recorded. Yes, the session is being recorded and we can make that available to participants through the email with which you registered. We have a question here from Chi Edozi Ike, Nigeria. The question says, thanks for this event and for the stimulating presentation. Please, what are the research opportunities for students and early career researchers in Nigeria with respect to global health? That's a question from Ikechi Edozi. So, Dr. Segan, you can respond while we await others. Thank you.
Thanks. I think while Nigeria is full of research opportunities, I agree that finding some of those opportunities can be a challenge. And so the students that I've worked with, some of these are master's and PhD students, and some of the methods that I talked about, while they require a lot of time and effort and energy, qualitative and quantitative social science methods research, requires an understanding of this discipline, are not very resource intensive as far as equipment. So there's lots of opportunities for pursuing independent research through those. Otherwise, you can look to ongoing projects and contacting people like myself or who are conducting long-term research and looking for opportunities. So I have multiple projects where I'm recruiting for students, and I know others are my collaborators. So different institutions who are engaged in this research are collaborating with students. And so these are advertised broadly on Twitter and targeted to different groups. And now I know another group to target, but also I wouldn't feel afraid or shy to reach out to people that you're really interested in their ongoing research, put your name out there, follow up, looking for those opportunities. And I'm sure that others on the panel might have more specific localized strategies for identifying those opportunities. So there's a lot of work ongoing. It's just about finding that relevant work.
Thank you very much. So I hope our participants have heard that these are issues around linkages, collaboration, networking. And that's one of the reasons behind this webinar. We have another question, a very personal one from Austin Wanko. He's asking, say, as a medical student who is interested in health education, seeing the rate of ignorance in Nigeria on health matters, is asking, taking up global health postgraduate studies, is it really a good move for me? From Wanko Austin.
I don't think I see a question, but I will comment on that in that I think it's important I agree with that comment, but also I hope that my presentation showed that you can do research and important research on health matters without a background in medicine, or even veterinary medicine. So ecology, forestry, social sciences, as well as medicine and veterinary medicine are all really important for understanding the emergence of new diseases. So I think this idea of One Health and you introducing that into different disciplines so people can pursue health-related research outside of medicine, or medical students can think more broadly about the types of research that go into understanding human health.
Thank you very much. So from an anonymous attendee, he's thanking first of all for the stimulating presentation. And then he's asking, he or she is asking, how have you been able to source for funds for your research? And just hold on, give me a minute. Source for your research, and then how can you please highlight ways to source for funds? So it's concerned about funding for research. Over.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I hope some of the panelists might be able to speak to this more who are based in Nigeria. But it's true that a lot of my funding for my research comes from US or foreign agencies. And so forming collaborations with people, but also I have students in Nigeria who are funded by the National Conservation Foundation, I have collaborators in Nigeria who have done Fulbrights, and that opens up a lot of opportunity for some funding and collaboration. And given that I'm not a Nigerian national, I'm not eligible for a lot of Nigerian funding or necessarily aware of the specific opportunities for Nigerians. I know it can be challenging, but I think a lot of the students that I work with are able to help fund some of their research through engaging in my projects or carve out an independent component of the research that we do as their own, that they can call their own, that builds off of research that can leverage some of the existing funding. So those are a couple ways that I know that research has been funded. And again, I hope the panelists can speak a little bit more, and I would love to learn from them as well.
Thank you very much. So we'll likely hear more about issues around funding for research at the panel discussion. There's someone who is interested in connecting with you, Dr. Segan, on LinkedIn, and is asking for your LinkedIn ID. So if you would like to share, so someone is asking for your LinkedIn ID.
I don't know my LinkedIn ID, but there's not a lot of Sagan Friants out there, so I think you'll be able to find me.
Yeah, I agree with you. So if you search for Sagan Friant, I did, and I found it, and I think I connected. I can't remember now, but I did, and I saw you on LinkedIn. So the person asking, just search for Sagan Friant, and then I guess by the time you see the name and look a bit at the profile, you will know and be sure that it's this presenter that you are dealing with, and you can send a message. Thank you very much. Ibrahim is also asking a question again. He's thanking you for the session. Ibrahim is currently in Nigeria, and he's saying that in Nigeria is a serious warning against the consumption of animal, especially cow, that's beef, skinned locally, caught pomo as food because it causes anthrax, or it can transmit anthrax. This skin has been a delicacy among the masses for a long time with no side effect. What is the view of the public health expert on this report?
I can't speak to POMO directly, although I have had plenty of it myself. But I think that this statement is really true for, as well as POMO, also for bushmeat or wild meat in Nigeria. That's a major delicacy in urban areas. And so I think a lot of some of the goals of the research I've taken is that the reason that people are consuming certain animals is going to change based off of where you are. And this gets to some of what I was talking about, like the context of the community. So answering questions like, is POMO really important to diets? Because if so, then we need to find a way to make sure that if you're going to recommend not consuming something, you don't want that to have negative consequences on food security or nutrition, especially in rural areas. I know a lot of areas where I work, POMO is really important when meat isn't available, that POMO becomes integrated more, and because it's dried, can be transported in some of these rural areas. And whereas in urban areas, if it is a delicacy and a preference-based thing, then awareness and risk assessment and communication of those risks becomes the important part of that. And so I think it's important that that information is delivered to people so that they know that the risks or potential risks of consuming or engaging in any behavior that promotes contact. But education just can't always be the answer, because there's other drivers, poverty, food insecurity, that might also be correlated with that behavior, depending on where you are. I think we lost our facilitator. I'm going to go ahead and read the next question. And so somebody is asking, as a young Nigerian student, how, with enthusiasm, how they can get connected to experts and researchers around the world, websites, handles, and so on. Thank you. I think reading a lot. So looking at active projects and published research. So obviously, when you're interested in a topic, looking at some of the research that's been done on that project and who's been involved with it is, and then going to find them, their institutions, both Nigerian and internationally, can really help direct those searches. So at every stage of my career, when I was kind of exploring new ideas, it was one or two papers that I read that really excited me. And I looked into what that person was doing and who they were working with to kind of figure out how to get into that area. So my career trajectory has not been straightforward. It's been about being curious and being bold and exploring those. And a lot of that comes from combining your lived experiences of things that you know as Nigerians living in Nigeria with the literature that's coming out of Nigeria and finding those areas where you really are going to be motivated to contribute. And a lot of that comes from reading and scientific articles, but also more broadly.
Thank you very much for those wonderful responses. We also had another question there on funding, but like we mentioned earlier, that can be dealt with in the course of the panelist discussion. For time's sake, we'd like to move on, but one more time, we'd like to appreciate you, Dr. Sega Frank, for this wonderful delivery. And we hope you'll find time to stay with us to the end of the session, or we do very much appreciate it. That'll be good. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
So we'll move on now. The next major session will be on the panel discussion, but before then, we have a short interlude in between. We don't mind if you stretch your legs a bit before we take the next 1 hour and the last 1 hour for this session. If there are more things you would like us to talk about, you can get feedback on the platform, the chat session, the Q&A from participants as part of our interlude session. All right. So during this session, I'll be sharing with us a few information which we believe will be of great benefit to the students. This webinar was designed to accommodate students in the medical sciences, social sciences, natural sciences, and environmental sciences. And we could see clearly from Dr. Sega's presentation that all of these, like all of these areas of studies we typically find in most universities in the world, show that there is a great connection, linkage between the major concerns of this area of study, so that in this global One Health platform, we find these connections everywhere. Animals, the environment, human health, and then even human behavior is another big area which has some complexity. So we believe that the participants in this section are benefiting a lot from this webinar this afternoon. This webinar is being organized by Nigeria Medical Student Association and the Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic. And so, if you don't mind, I will take a few minutes to share with us what we do at the Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic. The idea behind this clinic is to provide a platform to build capacity for researchers in developing countries, including Nigeria and, of course, other countries in Africa and some other parts of the world. The idea is that we've seen from studies from literature that the contribution from these parts of the world to global health research is still at the infantry level, where we have majority of contributions coming from the more advanced economies of the world. So the idea behind Pandora-ISTH Research Clinic is to support capacity building among undergraduate and graduate students, and then also among healthcare professionals who are practicing in the field. We also intend to provide supportive supervision for students and for sites, for research sites and project sites. In this, through the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of lessons were learned, and the world has now more than ever before embraced virtual research activities. So ISTH virtual research intends to provide and support this gap, particularly in developing countries, Nigeria, and other parts of Africa. Some students were asking about how they could participate, how they could engage in the kind of research that Dr. Segan painted for us this afternoon. We are also willing to provide networking opportunities. This platform intends to provide networking opportunities. So if you visit the website at istoresearching.org.ng, you'll find there sessions for student researchers. We have resources available to support the student research, show them the way, encourage them, and inspire them. If a student goes in there, just register on the website, and then you have access to those resource materials. In addition, we provide up-to-date information on how to find grants, and how to find research funding, and even scholarship. And where any student has any difficulty in accessing these grants or getting a contribution, can reach back to us through the platform of the Virtual Research Clinic website, and they'll be willing to provide you the support you need. One unique thing about the faculty at the Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic is that we do not have all that everyone may require, but definitely we have the platform to link every researcher to the support he or she needs from any part of the world. We also promote research integrity using what has been called the virtue clock. The virtue clock was the innovative creation of one of the faculty members of the Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic, Dr. Ikechi Edozie, and through it we provide information and provide support to encourage research integrity. So we believe that all participants that register for this webinar will take advantage of this information, go to the website, register, and on a more long-term basis, we can provide the support you need, we can provide answers to your questions, we can link you up to person professionals and professional groups all over the world to support your research effort and ensure that you find the research journey very interesting and stimulating. We also have on the site the dilemma game that provides a way to teach about research ethics and research integrity. And we trust to get feedback on this as we go on. So once again, thank you everyone for joining this webinar. I would like to inform our participants that on the webinar this afternoon, we have students from several universities across Nigeria, from northern Nigeria, parts of western Nigeria, parts of eastern Nigeria, and even the south, where Dr. Segan Frank is doing a very wonderful work over there in Calabar. And I'm very sure some of our students will be on this platform and seeing the beautiful work that she has shown us. I personally am encouraged, and I would like to draw Dr. Segan's attention to the very first picture you showed us, that picture that had the bat, the fruit, and then a monkey. I would like you, if it's possible, to also maybe ask the designer to include the rodents there, because here at the Virtual Research Clinic, we're interested in those zoonoses that are transmitted by rodents. And chief among them is the Lassa fever, which is a major problem in some parts of Nigeria. Once again, Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry for that glitch in the network. So we'll move on now to introducing the panelists for the discussion. And we have on the call this afternoon, Dr. Azuka Adeke. Dr. Azuka Stephen Adeke is a consultant public health physician with Alex Ekwebe Federal University Teaching Hospital in Ebonyi State in southeastern Nigeria. He's a graduate of the Nigerian Field Epidemiology and Laboratory Training Program and has a master's in public health with specialty in field epidemiology from the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Zaria is in northern Nigeria. He is also a fellow of the West African College of Physicians in the Faculty of Community Health. He obtained a diploma in tropical medicine, diploma of tropical medicine and hygiene from the Royal College of Physicians. And for 9 years now, he has supported the management of control of tuberculosis, HIV, and Lassa fever in his primary workplace. And in the past 5 years, he has supported several outbreak responses for diseases like Lassa fever, yellow fever, and COVID-19, as well as being part of the management supporting immunization for African Field Epidemiology Network. Dr. Adeke has authored 20 scientific publications. He is a 2019 to 2020 recipient of the Cardiovascular Disease Small Grant from Training Programs in Epidemiology and Public Health Interventions Network. He is a member of the Royal Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene since 2019 and was one of the recipients of the Society's grant for early career researchers in 2020. So I'd like you to join me to welcome Dr. Adeke to this panel. Dr. Adeke, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So we also have joining us this afternoon somebody who has led us this afternoon in clapping, appreciating, and supported in making this session very stimulating. Dr. Metri T. Dr. Metri T is a medical anthropologist and a physician who specialized in public health. She earned a medical degree from Paris 7 University in France and a master's degree in global health from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. Her research interests focus on health policies and determinants of healthcare access. During her medical residency, Metri contributed to various interdisciplinary and international research projects, including HIV prevention and care among prisoners in Ivory Coast, malnutrition among newborn in Benin, virus care among people who inject drugs in Northern Thailand, territorial inequalities in France. So you see from her resume that her research transcends areas in the world where we call where there are challenges with these various health conditions. From 2019 to 2021, she was a postdoctoral researcher in Dr. Segan Fran's research team at Penn State University in USA, where she led a community-based mixed method study on disease knowledge, risk perception, and healthcare seeking behavior in the context of Lassa fever disease in Nigeria. Most recently, she provided methodological support, both in qualitative and mixed methods, to feed activities conducted at Epicenter at MSF. Metri is currently undertaking doctoral degree in anthropology at Durham University, UK. Her PhD project will take an ethnographic approach to investigate the response and preparedness to Lassa fever in Nigeria at different levels of the healthcare system. So join me to welcome Dr. Metri to this panel. You're welcome. And finally, the last but not the least, we also have Dr. Joseph Ibukwe joining the panel this afternoon. Joseph Ibukwe, PhD, is an early career researcher who earned his Bachelor of Science degree in zoology from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife in Nigeria. His research work has been on rodent reservoir dynamics and human-rodent interaction that contribute to the spillover of Lassa fever in Nigeria. He's also working at bad pathogens and their potential threat to human health in Nigeria. He is a recipient of the Ortrud Mura Grant for Training on Epidemiology and Control of Infectious Diseases. Society of received the early research grant of society in 2022 and currently carrying out a quantitative study assessing human behavior as risk factor for seasonal incidents of Lassa fever in a highly endemic locality within Nigeria. So join me to welcome Dr. Joseph to this panel session. Dr. Joseph, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So I would like to start by giving opportunity to say hello to each of the panelists, and I would like to start with Dr. Deke. We didn't hear you earlier, Dr. Deke.
Hello, can you hear me?
You can hear you. Just say hello to everyone on the call.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and morning to those in another part of the world. I just want to welcome everyone. This is an interesting session, and I'm hoping that it's very useful to a lot of the participants in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adeki. You're welcome. Yes, Dr. Metri, we'd like to hear your voice now.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me in this panel today. It's in this webinar. It's really nice. And yeah, I can clap also. You can hear the clap.
It's good to have you. It's good to have you. Dr. Joseph, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, everyone in this call. So happy to be part of this. We are the background at the initiation of it. So I'm so happy that things coming out live and it's happening today. And we're looking forward to an exciting session during this panel discussion. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Dr. Joseph, you are welcome. So for participants, this session will get thoughts, experiences, and recommendations from the panelists regarding working in the field of global One Health research. So for some of the questions you had earlier on during the wonderful speech delivered by Dr. Segan Frank, you will have opportunity to get some of the answers that you seek for. So right away, we'll start. I'd like to start like this. I would like to ask, starting from Dr. Joseph, while we're talking earlier today, I said something to him. Somebody once said to me that everyone who became something first heard something. So I'd like to ask Joseph, what was it you heard? What was that turning point information you heard early on in your career that made you make up your mind to get interested in research?
Yeah, so the turning point, yeah, for me is very okay, let me start. I think most Nigerians will be able to relate to what I want to say now. Like for someone in zoology, the one question I used to ask them that did you pick the course or the course picked you? Sorry, Dr. Metrif and Dr. Segna, don't worry. You may not really appreciate what I'm trying to say in a sense, because like people in natural sciences, most
Apologies for that short speech. We'll just give Dr. Joseph a minute to reconnect and continue sharing his experience with us. All right, I have permission to carry on while we get Dr. Joseph sorted out. So I will move on now to Dr. Metri, and I don't mind repeating the same question. Early on in your career, I want to assume there was something that
can you hear me now?
Dr. Joseph, I can hear you. Can you just give me a minute? Just join I'll come back to you. Is that okay?
No problem.
Okay. I'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I'm on with Dr. Metri now. So I was just asking her, sometime in your early career, Dr. Metri, you must have an experience and exposure that made you interested in your current line of research. Can you share that experience with us briefly?
I think it has happened several times, and I wanted to. So I saw the list of questions that some attendees sent in advance of this webinar, and there's a lot of. It seems there's a lot about how do you get inspiration, and how do you know what is gonna be carry like. What are good career orientations and so on. I think for me, I had the chance of meeting very good mentors along the way. So I have a very my trajectory, my professional trajectory started by medical school, but then I got interested in more. Less clinical activity, but more about knowing what was behind the practices, like the health policies and the guidelines. And I think I have had multiple encounters during my my medical school and then my public health residency. So it would be hard to pick one. It would be hard to pick one specific inspiration, but sorry.
Okay. All right. I guess in the course of the discussion, you might be able to share with us more on that. And I would like to move on to Dr. Deki. This one is a bit different now. You have experience in field epidemiology. So I would like to ask if this kind of experience, such experience, can it facilitate or can it enhance student research can facilitate or enhance students training across all fields? Dr. Deki.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Regarding field epidemiology, I would say, okay, I'm a doctor, so, and I think coincidentally, I trained where this virtual research clinic is located. And so if I want to connect my field epidemiology training to the life of a medical student, I would say that it's really not something that should be so away from what medical students do during their community medicine posting. Actually, I expect that as a medical student back then in Brusali University linked to ISTH, there were times you have to do research, conduct some research, and some of these research projects that medical students would carry out could actually be seen as epidemiology projects, because probably you could be wanting to ask questions such as the distribution, the determinants, and deterrence. These are some very possible questions that medical students projects get to answer during their community medicine posting. So, but I would say bringing in field epidemiology into it, medical students could probably key into it as students, maybe before they graduate, in the sense that they get to volunteer in some activities such as, let's say, disease outbreak responses, let's say like in ISTH and its environs where Lassa fever is a common one. Somehow some of these students could be incorporated during some of these fieldworks to just have like real life hands-on experiences of how the experts get to handle or respond to some of these disease outbreaks. Yeah. So that will be all for now. Thank you. You are muted.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you for your response. Typically, in many training institutions in Nigeria, many students do not get to know about that time of their training where public health posting, community health posting, community medicine posting that may be called in different places. Thank you very much for that response. And so now, very closely linked to this now, I'm taking this question now to Dr. Joseph Ibukwe. You can, before you respond to this, continue to share with us that earlier question I asked you. But the main question I'm actually asking you now is that for students, whether students who are studying medicine, students who are those studying social sciences, at what time, looking at the kind of training we have in this part of the world, at what time do you think is the best time to introduce them in health-related research experiences? Dr. Joseph.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity once again. Yeah, I think the question I was answering the other time and this one just raised in a way they connected, because also I'm trying to say, when I started really getting involved with researches that have to do with, community-based kind of research, in a sense, which actually stirred my interest to continue. After my degree in zoology, which sometimes, as I said, it was not something you wanted medicine, but you got zoology in a sense. Well, getting involved with a project, it was, I think that was an organization at the European Foundation for Initiative for Research into Neglected Tropical Disease, during that the Volkswagen Foundation in Germany, the one that sponsored that. My supervisor got this fellowship with them. We were doing a study in the ecology of transmission of Lassa virus from rodent to humans in some flashpoint area in Nigeria. So in a way, that experience on the fieldwork, going about the country, sampling rodents, and then to identify the strain of Lassa virus and rodent in Nigeria, really helped me to see how applicable my own field of study in terms of zoology can be put to use in a community health related kind of research, in a sense. And in a way, that's still the interest that, so this is really possible. I have an idea of zoology, we did taxonomy, ecology of rodent and all. But in a sense, how does that now apply to solving a practical problem in the community? That's what last time I came up with your background in ecology, you understand rodent identification. How can that correlate to maybe contact between rodent, human, and then spillover of disease? In a way, make it more interesting. So that was my first contact. But my thought thereafter was not like, what if from part 2? For us now, maybe your second year in school for natural sciences, because we spent 4 years degree, you have been involved in this kind of study, like maybe as a volunteer, maybe your supervisor or one of the lecturers is doing a research along this line, and then you have been, maybe during the holiday, maybe like a holiday job, joining this kind of efforts and all. There's a way it helps you to even be more interested in your course of study and then put more energy into making the most of it. For medical students now, maybe for most of these postings, as Dr. Adeke was raising, things they could do that they can volunteer, get involved with practical real life experiences, so they can see, this is what we are learning in school, this is how I think connects to the community situation in my own community in a way, and how I can, from my field of study, is how it connects with some problem in my community, and this is how I can use my skill set to solve some of these problems. So in a way, that's something that I think that really the whole essence of this webinar and also this discussion. So for me, that was the experience that Nightstar tried for me. That's after my BSc program, and that involving the project made me see the possibility And but to me, I think from second year in school, I mean, for part one, you will still be doing general courses and all. But from the second year, even if you are not in the forefront, if all you are doing is just dropping equipment, like for us, when we go for feedback, some people are involved in just maybe data recording and all. Please be involved that way. Part three, part four, you are even already have a concept of a project you can do in the final year. That is not just do anything, but something that can really solve in a way to some extent a problem in the community and all. So that would be my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph, for sharing those practical experiences. And I believe that many of the student participants this afternoon can relate to this. I personally have had those kind of experiences that pushed me on this path of career that I've chosen today. I think that people you naturally want to do out of, you think you are helping somebody carrying out a project, but somehow you get to pick up some ideas along the line. It's something we'd like to encourage our students to keep doing. And just so along that, before I come back to Dr. Metri, I'd still like to ask Dr. Adeke these questions now. Looking at your practice environment, using as an example, practically, what are those opportunities that are available for students to participate in activities that in the long run or in the medium term stimulate or encourage them to go into research?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this question. I would be very honest. I really think that even if there are opportunities, sometimes the opportunities might not be something that there is easy access to be part of. I'm saying this in relation to, for instance, let's say within the, for students, okay, when I say students now, I mean whether medical or natural sciences or any student in the university. There are some lecturers that have won grants, and so they are carrying out some research projects that are probably a bit large, and so for such projects, it's possible that they would need research assistants, which is best to really, for me, have undergraduate students participate in such opportunities as research assistants. But based on how I've seen things play out, sometimes probably students may want to be paid for such roles, and they probably want such things to come with some kind of pecuniary gain. But sometimes it might, to get such opportunities, I advise students that they should have the volunteering mindset. Volunteering could actually make it easier for someone that has research projects ongoing to get you involved. And in the course of volunteering, there might not be probably opportunities where there is funding for, pay for this role, and then you begin to get little opportunities. But I advise that students shouldn't always see the pecuniary gain as the first thing. They should see the opportunity for learning first. And if they are willing to volunteer, even when there are projects, health-related projects, let's say with some of these non-governmental organizations, they can actually volunteer for such opportunities. Most times, organizations, whether within the university or NGOs, may be willing to allow volunteers because they might not have budgeted, they might already have capped budgets. So, but when you come in as a volunteer, you could be allowed in, and then you begin to learn. And then when there are little opportunities, you could just gain financially. That's how I can say that.
Thank you very much. Very, very, very practical. And I believe a lot of our students can also relate to this. Now, for Dr. Metri, the area of collaboration, right from the keynote addressed by Dr. Segan, and then now from the comments that I've had so far, we see that if you are going to talk about global One Health, we're going to talk about research efforts involving issues in the environment, in human populations, in animal population, risk behaviors. There is the need for there to be some form of networking, collaboration. So we'd like Dr. Metri to share with us her experience in collaboration across various fields of research.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, and especially in One Health that is inherently interdisciplinary, with people from human health and people from animal health and people from environmental health. Collaboration makes it, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid making this active move to people outside your discipline. And I think, well, in my experience, I had the chance to do an internship. One of my early public health residency internship was in an interdisciplinary team. It was at in an organization funded by the French government, and it was involved in development and humanitarian health, humanitarian aid in the field of health. And it involved doing like hospital twinnings between the global north and the global south. So yeah, my experience is more human health. It's not One Health, but what I want to say is that it really involved people from the field of policymaking, the field of epidemiology. There was physicians and also an anthropologist. So for me, that was the early encounter of working interdisciplinarily, and it was very strange at first. I can see that from start. It's hard to remember because it's a long time ago now, but when I first started when I arrived in this rotation, I was very used to working only in hospitals with healthcare workers, and so that was my home. And so suddenly I was working with people outside this world of healthcare and the health system. So it was I don't know if I answered the question, but sharing my early experience in collaborating across disciplines.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Your story is typical for most persons in medicine, healthcare professionals, doctors, typical, because all through medical school, the early days in our careers, we deal with humans, whether in the hospital or even on the field. But somewhere along the line, you just come to realize that you can't do quality research that will be very impactful without having to consider what other persons are doing in other fields. So the idea of collaboration is something like you can't even avoid now in this in contemporary things. You can't actually avoid it. The research becomes more impactful when you are able to relate to it. It's a case of bringing several areas of strength together to achieve a common goal. So Dr. Metri, thank you for that response. Just before I let you go, I was going to ask you one more question. Now, looking back now to what you were doing just as a physician and now what you are involved in working with other people, what will be your remark? Which is a better experience, working alone or now working with others?
Oh, you're asking me to compare the before and after?
Exactly.
It was, well, now I would say, of course, I prefer what I do now, but before going outside this world of medicine, I was so happy. I was happy in every internship I was doing. Like I was in neurosurgery. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I was in obstetrics. I wanted to be an obstetrician. Like, I mean, I think a lot of students can relate to that once you've spent a lot of time, like every day in the hospital ward, taking care of patients, and you are absorbed by this and you want to do that. So I think I was very passionate as a medical student and as a physician, as a clinical physician. But now what I really like where I am now, because I think it makes more sense with my interests and my values. And again, there's not one answer for everyone. I think it's important to follow your interest. If you are very happy doing clinical activity, then so be it. Just do that, and you will be perfect in that. But that was not my case. I felt a bit out of place in that in that practice, and I had an eye-opening experience doing an internship abroad and seeing other ways of healthcare given in Peru, and I just started to question what I was doing, and I needed to take a step back and be more analytical, and that brought me to research and public health. But so I'm very happy now, because I see the health, the interdisciplinarity, and also the impact of doing research on what on the practice, and that makes sense for me. But that would be a different answer for a clinician.
Thank you very much. I agree with you. Different answer. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll now go back to Dr. Joseph. I'm going to ask you this a bit, just to kind of make it clearer to our participants. The different areas in One Health. What are the different areas, the major areas in One Health, and how could these feeds, where we have participants from, we have participants from medicine, from social sciences, from environmental health, from natural sciences, how could they fit into these various areas of One Health in terms of research?
Very much again. Yeah, and I believe Dr. Segan, I believe, given a very good overview of the concept of One Health, and is about looking at human health challenges from the context of the factors that affect the human environments and animal, and where they everything contributes. This what stem out this need for collaborative efforts in tackling things that affect everyone who was in. So the good thing about this is about we having students from different fields coming to see that, oh, okay, you don't have to be in medicine really to do health-related research. But that's one challenge that some of us, okay, I'm talking from the Nigerian point of view, in the sense that all of us want to do medicine, in a sense. But to do this, you can still be contributing to medical-related or health-related research without necessarily having to be a medical doctor, in that sense of the thing. And now is coming to a place where every field now have a part to play in tackling health-related issues. Looking at Lassa fever, for example, there are clinical researches going on, a lot of vaccine trials going on, a lot of biomedical researches going on, which are very interesting. But for my own end, I'm a zoologist training. So, and there's no way we want to talk about Lassa without talking about the animal reservoir, just in a sense. So in a way, the ecology are very important, because that helps to see the whole picture of this spillover and all. So in a way, zoologists now are contributing to NASA research. Also, coming into the social sciences aspect of the work, studying human behavior, things that predispose them to contact with the animal or with dead bodies or things like that, behaviors that expose and behavior that meditate against the spread. So those are things that you see social scientists now coming with mixed methods approaches to assess factors that contribute to contact and then spillover. And so in a way, everyone has a part to play. So this is just to encourage other people on the floor. If you are not a medical student, in a sense, whether you're in natural sciences, zoologists, microbiologists, or chemists, people in, basically, or also people from social sciences, especially psychology, sociology and anthropology, and then demography, and social statistics. There are a lot of things that this field now contributes to having a better picture of especially zoonotic diseases and every other health-related issues that every person have a part to play. Yeah, so I think that we can want to stress it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph. And thank you everyone that has been sharing his or her thoughts with us on this panel session. As we begin to wind down in this session now, I would like to ask this, starting with Dr. Adeke, looking at what kind of research you have been involved in, what kind of research you've collaborated with, and then from your own knowledge from literature and others, what do you think are the trendy issues now in global health research that our students will need to be aware of? Do one or two of them, and then we'll just take it around like that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so interestingly, just to show how global health could also enhance networking, in the course of when I was told about this webinar, I never knew some other persons I had worked with would be in this, and only to now see that we're all in here. So it just shows how, in summary, global health can also link everyone. Having said that, I have been involved in some research projects on Lassa fever within Ebonyi State of Nigeria. I'm also currently involved in the Mpox project that Dr. Sagan talked about, so which is also an interesting one, covering some states in southern Nigeria. I have also done some projects around neglected tropical diseases, which was a project I did with the grant I got from the Royal Society for Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. And then more recently, too, I've been also doing some projects around non-communicable diseases, especially hypertension, which is a growing or increasing burden in this part of the world. So while we majorly think that, oh yes, infectious diseases are like a very major issue, we are also having this increasing burden of non-communicable diseases, so giving us this double burden of diseases. So in relation to interest for students, infectious diseases are out there, whether they are the parasitic or whatever, they are just so many. But I also want to encourage that the non-communicable diseases are opportunities, and there could be some little funding opportunities for students to even begin to apply for grants, just like I had benefited some years back with applying for small grants for an early career researcher. So this is something I think students too can begin to think about and begin to learn how to do some of these things. When I wrote, I didn't have any special skill, but it worked out with the very first one. So I encourage that even as students, especially as they begin to get closer to finishing, they can dare into applying for grants to dare to do some little projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeke Azuka, for your responses. I would like to move on now to Dr. Metri. This final one from us here, I won't stretch beyond this point because of the time constraint. Dr. Metri, your opinion, what do you think are trending global health issues from your area of study, from your research, that students could be involved in or need to be aware of to at least create some sort of inspiration for them?
Okay, thank you for this question. I think, well, I think you cannot put away, like, well, One Health is definitely, I should start with this. I should start with the advice that was given to me before, but also, and now it makes more sense as I advance in my career, that I think you should primarily choose your area of research and based on your own interest, and not based on what is fashionable and what you think might make a buzz. Mostly well, it might be a bit provocative to say that, but mostly because it is very difficult to do research, and and even when you're passionate about the subject, you can be tired sometimes. So I think it's really important that the topic and the research speaks to you as much as possible, because so don't pick something just because people told you it's trendy and but it doesn't echo in you, because then at some point you will be bored or you will feel you won't know what you're doing there. But that being said, I think One Health is definitely a field of that luckily and unluckily will never be will never be exhausted because of all the climate and environmental changes. A lot of diseases, spillover diseases, continue to cause outbreaks. So definitely this, but also I think the non-communicable diseases is something that is becoming, well, it has always been something in what we call the global north, but as countries do their epidemiological transition, it becomes more and more relevant everywhere. So I think non-communicable diseases, and as Dr. Adeke said, he was involved in cardiovascular diseases, and maybe I would add a bonus about access to care, universal healthcare. Well, I think that is something relevant, but this is more my hunch and not as verified. That was for me. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. So from the responses we've had now from Azuka and then from Metri, we see that there's a whole lot that can be done. And so we'd like our platform to take note in areas of infectious disease and non-communicable disease. And now, Dr. Metri just introduced another area, which is access to healthcare. For me, that personally is an area I'm interested in, health system strengthening, what is available to people and how they're able to cope with what they have to access healthcare. So thank you very much, Dr. Metri, for your response. Now, finally, Dr. Joseph Igboke, I would like to ask you virtually the same question. Is there any other area that has not been mentioned that you'd like to share with us where students could possibly look at to see if they could be involved in those research?
You mentioned basic ones, the one that applied to the context of our community, country, Nigeria, the place of zoonotic emerging infectious disease, especially zoonotic, which is the one, and then the non-communicable disease. So one thing I just want to raise is possible funding opportunities that we can look into. Like Dr. Adeke actually showed, this Royal Society for Tropical Medicine and Hygiene is a society I want to express, at least for most medical students, natural science students can look it up to join the society. And then also there's platform to become student ambassadors from the society, and also other funding opportunities. Friends in tropical medicine in Nigeria have always been shared with members, and also in a way we can give them more access to knowledge, to trends still happening, and also to funding opportunities that they can take advantage of, especially all those things that comes up once in a while. So that's the one thing I just want to add. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Stephen Adeke Azuka, Dr. Metri T, and now Dr. Joseph for taking out time to be part of this panel discussion this afternoon. I would like to also thank our participants for taking out time to listen in. So if you have any additional questions to the one we have on the Q&A box right now, you could drop them and see for the next, we have a few more minutes to the end of this webinar to see if we can take any one of them. Dr. Segan, if you're still on the call, somebody had asked if you do any research of fungal infection. If you don't mind, you could drop the response to on the chat box for Nuruddin Mohammed. So Nuruddin Mohammed is asking if you are involved and if you have done any research on fungal infection here in Nigeria. And then any of the panelists can respond to this. Somebody is asking, Wowe is asking, why are most scientific conferences not medical student friendly? How do medical students get involved in these conferences? So any of the panelists can please respond to Wowe. And that's actually the last question.
Can I respond?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you. The name, I can't get it clearly. Yowie, I guess.
Yowie.
Yeah. So I don't think I completely agree with the statements that most scientific conferences are not medical students friendly. I have actually attended conferences both within the country and outside the country where, you know, students were part of the conferences, whether even to the point of presenting abstracts. Okay, so I want to disabuse the mind of the person that asked that question. There are even opportunities for even when you submit an abstract. Let's say, if I use example of medical students, even the natural sciences, some other departments, they also get to do projects. So even some of those projects you do, if they are of some level of quality, you could even begin to come up with abstracts and then submit for some of these health conferences. And when you're selected, sometimes you get to be funded to even attend the conference with your flights, your transportation, and even your accommodation catered for. So just to correct the impression that it may not be entirely true, open up your mind and keep trying out applications when you see them, both locally and internationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Azuka. Unfortunately, we can't take any more questions now, but just to inform the person asking about mentorship and Matthew Abiodun, thank you for your comment, asking about opportunity and grant for researches. We would like to inform you that part of what we do at ISTH Virtual Research Clinic is to provide information on this. So at any time, you can check the website, register and log in, and then you will have access to those information. The same response goes to the person asking about mentorship. Part of what we intend to do with their email addresses and your submissions during registration is to get back to you and share with you information about how you can be mentored and how you can be linked up to persons who are doing research. From my end this afternoon, I'd like to just reiterate again, one of the lessons we learned today: have a volunteering mindset as a student. Be willing to join research effort even when there is no pecuniary gain, if I can read the words of Dr. Azuka. And then somewhere along the line, you will learn, and somewhere along the line, you may now have enough information to pick up a role that will be beneficial to you, both in the immediate term and the long term. Let your eye be on the bigger picture, and somewhere along the line, you'll find reward for your effort. So this afternoon, I'd like to appreciate again Dr. Segafran, who stayed with us all through. Thank you very much for that wonderful lecture. Thank you. We'll get back to you at some other time. Also on this platform, our panelists, Dr. Metri, Dr. Joseph Igukwe, Dr. Azuka, thank you for joining the panel. We also have on this panel some other persons, Professor Sogun, Dr. Ike, and others for joining the panel. We have Dr. Ike Chiedozie. He is the manager of the ISTH Virtual Research Clinic and joined us this afternoon. Raising his hand, can the ICT enable Dr. Ike to please make his comments?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, can you hear you, Dr. Ike?
Yeah, just want to appreciate every one of you for this beautiful panel discussion and the presentation from the keynote speaker. I'm not speaking on behalf of Pandora, but I want to thank NIMSA and the PI of Pandora, Professor Sogu. It has been a journey and it's been like a dream coming true today. But one thing I would like to say before we go, because I know that we are on top of the hour, we just need to leave now, is so one, to appreciate the speaker, the keynote speaker, and the panelists, Joseph and Azeke and Mitriv. I know that Azeke may not know that I'm an alumni of Ebonyi State University and Lexa Kweme University. So for many students that have attended this program, I'd like to tell you that PandoraID.net, ISTH Nigeria is working out some things to support student researchers. In 2004 precisely, I became the first medical student to conduct a study in Ebonyi State University. And my study was the commonest site of occurrence of fractures in victims of road traffic accidents at Orthopedic Hospital in Enugu State. And from there, I became the first research student, started in NOMESRES. You may have heard of NOMESRES, Nobel Medical Research Student Society. And I want to tell you that one of the problems we have as students in Nigeria is that our curriculum is jam-packed, and somehow our medical or undergraduate curriculum is not supporting opportunity for students to examine, to ask questions, to ponder, to imagine. So we are conducting studies. We are trying to ask students what they think. We're trying to look at the curriculum from Nigerian University Commission, Medical and Dental Council to see how we could allow undergraduates to explore and to question everything they have heard. It is unfortunate to say this, that some of our textbooks are obsolete. Some of us are using textbooks of last century or last decade. And so we need to think. But for some students who can go beyond the normal thing that every other student does, please come mentor, get close to your lecturers, and then form clubs. There are many opportunities, like Joseph, like Azeke told us. And as time goes on, we believe that universities will begin to see the importance of including undergraduate research. And we believe this webinar is one of those opportunities to speak to our university administrators, curriculum developers in Africa, in Nigeria. And as I said before, I want to thank PandoraID.net Nigeria and Pandora generally globally for this opportunity, for using Joseph and NIMSA to bring up this program, the speakers. Finally, I condole the NIMSA Nigeria, and I'm hoping that the good Lord will console every one of us. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ike. Before we invite the NIMSA representative to give us a vote of thanks on behalf of the students, Professor Asogu, I don't know if you have some closing words for us. Prof.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Afonsos and the panelists for a job well done. I know I'm very busy, but I stayed all through this webinar. Honestly, I enjoyed every bit of it. And I hope the medical students, they really benefited. Those of them who stayed to the end. The panelists were from different backgrounds. You see that there was this converging on one health as emphasized by actually all of them. So I think we'll have some time to bring them back. Yeah, it's a good start. So I would like to say maybe they become part of our faculty if the ES and the manager of the clinic do agree with me. These are very erudite scientists and researchers that want to continue to collaborate with. So I want to thank them again for their time. I want to thank our people on the background, Dr. Sosahon and Marvel and Mark and Gose. And I want to thank the Pandora coordinators. Yeah, I actually invited Professor Zumla to join. I hope he was able to have a glimpse of what Pandora is doing here in Nigeria, building the future of early career researchers. So we are glad that it happened. Thank you very much. And next time, we hope to see you. Bye for now.
Thank you, Prof. At this point, as we round off, we call on participants to Please put on their videos if you have not done so, so that we can capture the faces that made today's program a success. Right now, we would like to call on Mr. Adebayo Aduragbemi Samuel, representative of Nigeria Medical Students Association, to please give the vote of thanks on behalf of NIMSA. Adura.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So my name is Adebayo Aduragbemi, a fourth-year medical student of Ambrose Ali University, Ekuma, Edo State. And on behalf of all the students who have participated in this webinar, we extend our heartfelt gratitude for this incredible opportunity. We want to express our deep appreciation to the organizers, ISTH Virtual Research Clinic, and the Office of the President in NIMSA, Nigeria, for putting together such a well-structured and informative event. The dedication and hard work has really made this webinar a resounding success. It has, been an eye-opener experience for all of us. We are grateful to the esteemed speaker and the panelists who share their valuable knowledge, insights, and experience. Their word has really ignited the spark within us to pursue research with a global perspective and make a meaningful impact on the world. And to all students who have actively participated, thank you for engaging in an thought-provoking discussion and asking insightful questions. Your enthusiasm and passion for creating positive change through research has really been inspiring. And as we leave this webinar, we take with us a renewed sense of purpose and determination. We are committed to harnessing the power of research to address global challenges and empower communities worldwide. We are grateful for the valuable connections and network we have built during this event. It has been amazing. We look forward to collaborating with fellow students and organizations in our pursuit of a brighter and more sustainable future. Once again, thank you very much for the organizers. I mentioned again, ISTH Research Clinic, the Office of the President, Dr. Igbokwe, and everybody that has been, part of the team of the organizers, the panelists, the speakers, and the fellow participants. Thank you for making this webinar an unforgettable experience. And let's continue this journey of research and global impact together. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Adura, and thank you, NIMSA. We're closing now. I don't know, Dr. Sega, any closing word for us, please, as we will shut down. Any closing word for us?
Just to thank the host so much for the kind introduction and the engagement throughout. It's been a great learning experience, and I learned a lot from the Nigeria-based panelists as well on helping to guide my own research team and students in the future through the processes in Nigeria. So I really appreciate that. And I just want to echo what Dr. Matre said, and that's to just really follow your interests, to be bold. Don't be afraid to go to new locations and new cultures. And I truly believe if you're deeply interested in something, that you can find opportunities. And the first time I came to Nigeria was off of a few small grants from different organizations trying to do a project. And that has led to a career of work in Nigeria. So you just never know where it can take you. And I really look forward to seeing more research led by the scientists in this room. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you, everyone. So from us here at ISTH Virtual Research Clinic, it's been a great time. Thank you once again, and bye-bye. I like to clap. I like to clap. I've seen pictures. I like to, yeah. Thank you, and do have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Over.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Matre. Bye-bye.